Discover the incredible response that transformed a ranch cook's life, a single widowed mother's fight for recognition. Sarah stood over the stovetop, stirring a vibrant pot of cattleman's stew, the aroma of spices swirling around her like a warm embrace. Yet even in the comfort of her kitchen, doubt crawled beneath her skin. She was a widow at 34, raising 2 young children while trying to keep this sprawling ranch kitchen running. Her husband's absence felt like a chasm, piecing together each day while wrestling with haunting memories of laughter replaced by an unsettling silence. The ranch owners, the wealthy Thompson family, thought of Sarah as just another hired hand. No matter how passionately she poured herself into her work, each delicious dish met with indifference. It was a constant gnawing ache, feeling dismissed, irrelevant in a world where privilege pushed her to the margins. Feedback slipped through her grasp like grains of sand, replaced instead by the gossip of the staff who surely saw her as an outsider. Today felt different, though. The air crackled with an unusual energy, and a glimmer of hope ignited when word spread that a renowned food critic was visiting. Could this be the moment where her culinary creations would finally receive the spotlight they deserved? The thought swelled in her chest. Maybe with the right recognition, she could prove she wasn't just a widowed mother lost in the shadows but a vital force in the kitchen, an architect of flavor. As she garnished the stew with fresh herbs, her fingers trembled. What if the critic took one bite and ridiculed her efforts? Would the staff be kind? Or would their envy shine through, undermining her moment? Questions circled her mind, a wild cyclone of anxiety mixing with ambition. She could feel the weight of "are they watching?" waiting for her to fail. She did not want to pass on her insecurities to her children, yet the voices in her head taunted her relentlessly. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The moment she finished the CTA, a knot formed in her stomach as she turned to see Carla, one of the kitchen staff, bearing an expression that was anything but friendly. Carla scoffed at Sarah's preparations, a whisper ricocheting through the kitchen about how the critic would only recognize those with connections. Could she really let those words sink in? As guests arrived, nervously adorned in their best, Sarah felt the heat of their expectant gaze. She held her breath, commanding her body to stay steady. The fight between her craving for validation and the realization of her actual worth raged within. Each slice of onion felt like an echo of her unrelenting determination. But could she withstand the jealousy that lay just beyond the kitchen door? The pressure mounted as the critic settled, poised to taste her hard work lined with hopes and fears. Her heart raced, muscles tensed, and every thought spun. Was success within reach or merely a mirage? Would her spirit crack under scrutiny, or could she rise against the noise that sought to drown her talents? In that moment, as she presented her dish, she stood on the precipice, the kitchen enveloped in silence, yearning for recognition in a world built on unseen worth. Would this veering path shape her and her children into something monumental, or would the forces around her snuff out her fragile flame? With every breath she took, Sarah felt the weight of the room pressing down on her. The critic, a renowned figure whose opinions could make or break a chef, did not seem to flinch as he took a spoonful of her stew. Instead, he closed his eyes, his face a mask of concentration, as if the very essence of the dish held secrets waiting to be uncovered. The kitchen held its breath alongside her, a tangible silence broken only by the crackling of the fire. Sarah dared not glance toward her colleagues. She could almost feel their eyes boring into her back, a silent jury weighing her worth against culinary standards they believed she could never meet. In the deepest corners of her mind, a mantra began to form. I am more than what they see. Beneath her surface-level fear lay a simmering determination. She wanted to be taken seriously, not just as a cook, but as an artist, a creator. As the critic savored the flavors, his brow furrowed. Sarah seized the moment to glance at the other guests, observing their reactions. Some looked engaged, absorbed in conversation, while others seemed distracted, too busy whispering to one another to notice the meticulously crafted plate before them. Had her efforts been in vain? Did they even care? When the critic finally set down his spoon, a triumphant smile spread across his face, much to Sarah's surprise. "Exceptional," he said, his voice laced with authority. "Rich flavors, depth in every bite. You've truly captured the essence of this dish." The kitchen erupted with murmurs, disbelief lacing the air. For Sarah, time froze. She had crossed a threshold, a boundary that separated the unknown from the recognition she longed for. But even amidst this fleeting victory, an unsettling thought crept in. Would this acceptance be enough to shift how others perceived her in this cutthroat environment? Would it silence Carla and her insidious Bobs? The critic continued to speak, but Sarah found herself retreating into her thoughts, questioning everything. She yearned for the validation of her peers, but wasn't the ultimate recognition from within? There was a growing gnaw of anxiety beneath her excitement. Could she maintain this moment? Could she build upon it? Once back in the kitchen, a fleeting wave of euphoria washed over her, but it quickly faded as Carla glided past her, a smug expression lingering on her face. "Must be nice having the critic stick his spoon in your pot. Not all of us are so fortunate. You'll always be just an employee, Sarah." Something ignited within Sarah, no longer merely the widow who cooked to survive, but now a figure with a spark of ambition fanned by a flicker of validation. The choice before her was clear. Would she let Carla's words continue to keep her in the shadows, or rise and claim her newfound space? Each chore felt heavier now, washing pots, chopping vegetables, as if they demanded answers she wasn't ready to give. A decision loomed over her head. Perhaps it was time to create a dish that was entirely her own, to take the leap into the unknown of her own ambitions. Suddenly, inspiration struck. Maybe it was time to host a small gathering on the ranch, a showcase of her very best, inviting not just the critic but the world around her. Standing up for her work would not just be a personal journey, it would be a public declaration of her talent. But could she handle the scrutiny of another chance? The thought thrummed in her mind like a live wire. She would ignite the flames of her own recognition. But the taste of possibility was tinged with trepidation. Was she prepared to lay herself bare again? As darkness cloaked the ranch and the stars blinked into existence, a single thought echoed in her mind, igniting both excitement and fear. The time had come to face not just her critics, but herself. The morning sun spilled across the spacious kitchen, turning the countertops into gleaming stages where the acts of preparation would unfold. Sarah stood at the center, her heart a cacophony of anticipation and doubt. The ambition to create a showcase dinner was now an inexorable tide pushing her forward. Yet each decision weighed heavily. What if no one appreciated it? What if the critic's praise was only an anomaly and she was destined for mediocrity? As she gathered ingredients, her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a growing determination. She could no longer allow doubt to dictate her actions. The vivid colors of fresh vegetables and herbs sparked ideas, igniting a flame within her that she believed had dimmed over the years. Each chop of the knife set off a ripple of creativity, allowing visions of the dinner to crystallize in her mind. But while the outer bustle of the kitchen began to mimic a symphony, turmoil brewed within. Sarah's mind spiraled through the risks. What if the dishes failed? What if guests found her unworthy? The memory of Carla's scornful remarks drifted back, an insidious echo reminding her of the fine line she walked between aspiration and humiliation. Pushing those thoughts aside, Sarah grabbed her notebook, a bastion of ideas and recipes she had carefully curated over time. It was her treasure map, leading her through the labyrinth of her culinary potential. Flicking through the pages, she began drafting her menu, her confidence rising with every stroke of the pen. Each dish would convey a piece of her soul, a melding of bold flavors and heartfelt memories. She envisioned a main course that echoed her late husband's favorite meal, infused with her unique twist, an homage to love and loss, resilience and hope. Would it resonate with others? Could it stir emotions beyond the plate? The questions swirled, but she pushed them aside. Creation required risk, and she was ready to dive in. With each passing day, the dinner began to materialize. As she planned, the shifts in her perspective evolved parallel to her culinary creations. Growing bolder, she started to experiment with new techniques, adding layers of flavors she had never tried before. The kitchen became a sanctuary, the chaos a melody of purpose, and Sarah immersed herself deeply, learning to trust her intuition. But preparing for the event meant facing discomfort. She would need to invite individuals whose opinions she both respected and feared. As invitations went out, a fierce sense of vulnerability washed over her. Would they see beneath the surface of her efforts? Would they recognize the talent she longed to showcase? The night approached quickly, and butterflies took flight in her stomach. The air thickened with excitement and fear as the realization dawned that this dinner wasn't just about the food. It was about her reclamation of identity and voice. As she paced through the ranch, the wind whispering through the trees, she caught sight of the twilight sky painting her horizon with strokes of pink and orange. She breathed in deeply, allowing herself a moment of clarity. It was not merely about proving herself to others but about validating her journey, embracing the fullness of who she had become. That night, as she prepared to unveil her creations, deep breaths steadied her nerves. She felt alive with purpose, ready to embrace the judgment of the world, but even more importantly, the admiration of her own self. The time had come to meet her fears head-on, to confront not just the palates of her guests, but the very foundation of her self-worth. As the first knock echoed through the kitchen, Sarah hesitated, the swell of responsibility and hope colliding within her. What awaited her at the door was not just her guests, but the potential for transformation and self-discovery. But what if the diners deemed her work unworthy? The door creaked open, an invitation caught between eagerness and trepidation. Guests flowed in, familiar faces lit by the warmth of their smiles. Yet Sarah's heart thundered with an anxious rhythm that drowned out the pleasantries around her. They embraced the space she had crafted, the air rich with the mingling aromas of her creations, but her thoughts twisted in knots, analyzing every expression for signs of judgment. As the evening progressed and the first dish was served, a delicate butternut squash soup garnished with a drizzle of sage oil, she held her breath. Moments felt like hours as she watched her guests savor the flavors. Their forks clinked against their bowls as they murmured praises that grazed her ears like soft music. For a fleeting moment, doubt loosened its grip just enough for her to relish a sense of validation. But then Carla arrived, her demeanor slick with confidence, her laughter sharp. The moment their eyes met, a tension ignited, crackling with the weight of unspoken rivalry. Sarah's heart sank. There was a shadow of competition that lingered, an unsettling reminder of previous jabs that had chipped away at her self-esteem. How would she handle Carla's presence? Would this confrontation reclaim her narrative, or would it taint the success she desperately sought? As the evening unfolded, she poured herself into each dish, her hands steadying with newfound determination. She watched her guests engage wholeheartedly, each conversation a thread weaving a tapestry of connection. Carla, however, became increasingly critical, her comments tinged with condescension, questioning the very essence of Sarah's culinary choices. The roast chicken, she remarked, was flavorful, but lacked the expected depth. An offhanded comment that felt like a gut punch. Though the bitterness of Carla's remarks festered within her, Sarah's resolve began to crystallize. Instead of retreating to doubt, she summoned the boldness she had nurtured over the past days. Each swirl of an ingredient brought forth a memory, a lesson learned. This wasn't about perfecting her craft for others. It was carving out her space in a world that often sought to suppress her voice. Faced with Carla's challenge, Sarah turned the conversation around. Maybe it's not about depth, but about capturing simplicity, she stated, her voice firmer than she felt. Sometimes food connects because of the stories behind them. The guests nodded, intrigued. Carla scoffed but was silenced by the sudden interest in Sarah's narrative, each tale an homage to her past, her late husband, the resilience she had built over the years. The stories wrapped around each dish like a woven fabric, softening the tension, creating a bridge over the raw chasm of resentment that separated them. Through the evening, Sarah found her rhythm within each dialogue, her confidence inseparable from the dishes laid before her. Laughter replaced silences, unease dissolved into connection, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a soft embrace of self-acceptance. This dinner wasn't about winning over critics like Carla, it was about sharing her journey, creating community through shared experiences. As the last course approached, sweat lingered on her brow, a gentle reminder of her dedication. She pulled together a dessert, a rich chocolate cake paired with raspberry coulis and fresh mint, intended not just as a sweet finale, but as an embodiment of her own resilience through trials. Yet, as she prepared to reveal her cake, a flicker of doubt returned, a shadowy whisper echoing her deepest fears. Was she truly ready to embrace herself? Would this triumph withstand the scrutiny of her rival? As happy chatter reverberated through the room, Sarah took a moment to breathe and gaze at her creation. A representation of her growth. The realization struck hard. It wasn't merely about the food she crafted. It was about the courage she had unearthed within to stand firmly in who she had become. But the moment her guests took their first bites, would they see not just a dessert, but the unwavering spirit powering each layer? The clink of forks and the satisfied murmurs of her guests fused with the sweet aroma of chocolate, swirling around Sarah like a comforting embrace. She carefully assembled her dessert, adding the finishing touches with a delicate precision that mirrored the surge of confidence surging within her. This final course was not only a tribute to her persistence, it was a defiant declaration of her passion. As she served the rich chocolate cake, her heart raced, anticipation mixing uneasily with apprehension. What would they say? Would they acknowledge the story behind each ingredient? The journey she traveled to get to this fragment of culinary mastery? As if reading her thoughts, she noticed Carla's scrutinizing gaze, analyzing the cake as though it were her life's work. For a moment, doubt ricocheted through her, a visceral fear that Carla would dissect every element until only fragments of her spirit remained. But then she reminded herself, this was not just about the food anymore. It was about her journey. Delicious, Carla finally pronounced, lingering on the word like it sputtered in her mouth. But I still think you could have done something a bit bolder with the flavors. A sharp intake of breath marked the tension. However, instead of crumbling under the weight of Carla's criticism, Sarah felt an unexpected flame ignite within her. Maybe boldness lies not just in complexity, but in refinement, she replied, and her own voice surprised her with its steadiness. A collective nod from the others fueled her resolve further. They were intrigued, affirming her perspective against the tide of Carla's condescension. In that moment, it became clear. The evening transcended mere culinary competition. She had rekindled her identity, redefined her connection to her cooking, and woven her story into each bite. While she initially endeavored to impress, she realized now that authenticity was the true measure of success. As the cake rapidly disappeared, her guests expressed genuine delight over the dessert, sharing their own memories associated with chocolate, each voice causing her inner strength to bloom more vividly. She had not merely created a dish, she had opened a door to dialogue, revealing layers of connection that surpassed any critique. The evening culminated with laughter and stories shared, but Carla lingered as a menacing reminder of past struggles. Sarah's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. Could she confront the weight of this rivalry effectively, while maintaining her newfound strength? Sarah. Carla approached her later, her tone slipping back into that unsettling polished condescension. If you really want to compete in this industry, you need to elevate your presentation. There it was again, the coded challenge masked as concern. Would she seize this moment to engage directly with Carla, forcing a reckoning between them? In that instant, Sarah contemplated her values: to continue growing as a chef, rise above petty rivalries, or sink into the shadows, letting doubt overshadow her hard-fought progress. Each choice echoed through her mind, the potential paths stretching out like branches of a vast looming tree. As the evening came to a close, the guests finally concluded the night with heartfelt gratitude, their eyes twinkling with joy. Yet, the energy between Sarah and Carla hung heavy within the air, electric and undeniable. Sarah had bridged a gap, discovered her voice, but hadn't yet confronted the sinister undertow of competition embodied in Carla. Did she have the courage to face her rival head-on? And as she swept her gaze over the guests now preparing to leave, a single defining thought ignited within her. Maybe the confrontation would shape her growth even further in ways she had never anticipated. Tomorrow, there would be a reckoning, a chance to confront the essence of competition, her newfound self-worth colliding with the raw essence of rivalry head-on. What would that encounter reveal about both of them? The morning light streamed through Sarah's kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of last night's gathering. A pile of dishes awaited her attention, yet her mind was occupied with thoughts of her upcoming confrontation with Carla. She hesitated, calling forth memories of their past competitions, each fraught with tension and unspoken words. A voice inside her urged her to prepare not just for a culinary debate, but for a reckoning that could redefine her path in this volatile world of culinary arts. As she washed a mixing bowl, she contemplated the duality of her situation. On one hand, there was the thrill of cooking, the creativity, the happiness of her guests relishing her chocolate cake. On the other hand, there was Carla, a constant reminder of her insecurities and the relentless pressure to conform to an industry rife with expectation. Would her choice to embrace authenticity repel or propel her? Setting the bowl down, Sarah decided it was time to fully embrace what she had learned about herself. Perhaps she had been too focused on impressing niche standards instead of boldly showcasing her capabilities. Strengthening her resolve, she recalled a seminar she attended months ago about the balance between artistry and commerce. Cooking is an expression of self, the speaker had insisted. Perhaps it was time for her to infuse that philosophy into her own approach. With each passing moment, she honed her thoughts into a plan for her confrontation. This wouldn't merely be a defense of her culinary choices, it would also be an assertion of her identity. By demonstrating her commitment to her vision, she could rewrite the narrative between herself and Carla. To do that, she needed to prepare not only her arguments, but also dishes that represented her growth. After squaring her shoulders, Sarah retrieved her notebook filled with recipes and sketches. She flipped to a section dedicated to innovative flavor pairings. Inspired, she crafted a plan for a tasting presentation that celebrated her newfound confidence. A daring mix of contrasts, sweet and savory, old family recipes interwoven with unexpected modern interpretations. Her culinary voice was her weapon, and she was ready to wield it. Practicing her presentation in front of the mirror, she found the words flowing more easily than expected. Carla, each element on my plate tells a story. It's about more than just taste. It's about the experiences that shaped me as a chef. Speaking aloud, she felt each conviction solidified her power. The suffocating doubts from the past began to lift. As the clock ticked closer to their meeting time, a whirl of energetic anticipation and unease settled in her stomach. Would Carla genuinely receive her challenge, or retreat into the same sharp-edged demeanor? Just as she finished preparing her notes, her phone buzzed, a message from Carla, confirming their meeting. A mixture of anxiety and determination coursed through her. This was it. Her moment was upon her. There was no turning back, each tick of the clock only affirming that her journey was not merely about cooking. It was a personal evolution that shaped her resolve and outlook. Drawing in a deep breath, Sarah felt empowered by the anticipation swirling in her chest. She envisioned diving into this confrontation, armed with her craft and self-expressions. What awaited her on the other side of that discussion? Actual recognition, further conflict, or something even more profound? With her culinary identity on the line, Sarah stood at the precipice of two stark paths, one filled with fear and one ripe with possibility. Would she seize the moment and take a step into the unknown, or retreat back into doubt? As uncertainty lingered, she felt an unmistakable surge of determination. Today was not just another day, it was the day she would define her future, one flavor at a time. With one last glance in the mirror, she steeled her resolve. Carla would no longer represent her fears, but instead a catalyst for her growth. As Sarah made her way to the meeting spot, a presentiment tinged the air. Something significant was brewing just beneath the surface. The moment of truth had arrived, and the stakes had never been higher. As Sarah approached the cafe where they had agreed to meet, her heart raced. The cafe, with its bustling ambiance and aromatic coffee, felt overwhelming yet oddly comforting. It was a casual setting for what spun in her mind as a crucial encounter, perhaps the pivotal moment of her culinary journey. She pushed the door open, its familiar jingle barely cutting through the anxious cacophony in her head. Carla arrived shortly after, her presence commanding and confident as always. They exchanged mere nods, yet within the chilly silence, Sarah sensed the tension crackling between them like static electricity. Taking a seat, Sarah's palms were clammy against the stark wooden table, and she forced herself to remember the resolve she had built through her morning rituals. This conversation was more than a debate. It was a duel of identities. "Thanks for coming, Sarah," Carla said in a tone that seemed to slice through the air. "I wasn't sure you'd actually show." With a steadying breath, Sarah replied, "I think it's time we talked about our approaches to cooking and what they mean to us." The words tumbled out, yet she felt the heavy weight of each one. Carla raised an eyebrow, a glimmer of amusement flickering in her otherwise hard expression. "You mean your new age fancy nonsense? Please, the culinary industry has standards for a reason. Authenticity doesn't trump experience." The challenge lay bare, like a stark white canvas awaiting paint. In that moment, Sarah realized that what she had once perceived as an obstacle was now an opportunity. The fear of Carla's sharp tongue disintegrated. Instead, she saw it as an opening to articulate her vision without the self-imposed chains of doubt. "It's not nonsense," Sarah countered, her voice gaining strength. "For too long, I've curated my dishes based on what I thought you and others would want to see. But I want my cooking to reflect who I truly am, a blend of my heritage and the creativity I've nurtured over the years." Carla's smirk wavered slightly, interest piqued. "And what exactly makes your cooking authentic?" With renewed conviction, Sarah described her dishes, the forgotten family recipes she had resurrected and transformed, the modern twists she had so carefully woven into them. Piece by piece, she painted a picture of how each element told a story of her life's journey, invigorated by the transformative philosophies that had finally taken root in her heart. "And what happens if nobody connects to those stories?" Carla interjected, her tone dropping to a dangerous lilt. "What if they just think it tastes weird?" "That's precisely the point," Sarah proclaimed. "Not every dish will appeal to everyone, but every dish should mean something to me. I've spent too long trying to please others at the expense of my own voice. I'd rather take risks than play it safe. That constitutes real culinary art." For a moment, the two women locked eyes, the momentum of the altercation spiraling into an electrifying silence. Sarah could see a flicker of understanding, or perhaps envy, flash across Carla's face. It dawned on her that this moment was more than an exchange regarding food. It was a confrontation about identity and purpose. Yet Carla's response was unyielding, as if she were bracing for war. "So what's next? Are you planning to abandon whatever makes you marketable?" "Not at all," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "I want to incorporate the multiple layers of my identity into my brand. Making a mark that signifies who I am shouldn't undermine my potential. It should expand it." As their exchange deepened, Sarah felt a liberating rush. A realization that her path was not solely tethered to acceptance from others, especially from Carla. She was creating a space that honored her journey and artistry. Still, a part of her felt an impending tremor in the air, a realization that uncertain tides might soon crash upon her newfound foundation. Just as Sarah prepared for Carla's next volley, her phone buzzed again, this time with news that seemed to prick her nerves. The message was brief, but held the weight of finality. An opportunity that many considered the pinnacle of culinary recognition awaited her, contingent upon the very choices she'd just fleshed out in this debate. Was she ready to step into the spotlight fully, embracing the risks of authenticity? Today had opened doors, yet it was only the beginning. With confidence swelling in her chest, Sarah turned to Carla, a brewing determination ready to boil over. What she hadn't anticipated was that this confrontation could propel her not only to defend her vision, but also to seize an opportunity of a lifetime, one that would demand she stand solidly in her truth. As she prepared to respond, the pressing question loomed before her. Would she fold under the pressure of expectation, or would she fully embrace the audacity of her passion? The next choice could redefine the trajectory of her dreams. The air hung heavy between them, charged with an intensity that made Sarah's fingers twitch against the table. Carla's question echoed in her mind, taunting her. Was she ready? She could feel the weight of that moment pressing down, suffocating her, yet it ignited a thrilling fire within. With each heartbeat, she could feel her resolve harden, aligning her purpose with the daunting opportunity awaiting her. "Carla," she began, her voice firm and unyielding, "I realize that this isn't just about cooking anymore. It's about the integrity of my journey, the stories I carry, and how they can connect with others, even if the connection is tenuous." Sarah could see the skepticism in Carla's eyes. It only fueled her determination. "I've built my culinary dreams on the narratives of struggle and triumph, on flavors that have shaped my existence. That's what I intend to channel into the competition." As she spoke, images cascaded through her mind, memories of family gatherings, the smell of her grandmother's kitchen, all the influences that carved her passion. It was raw, it was real, and it was hers. A thunderous sense of purpose coursed through her veins as she articulated her vision, feeling the flickering spark in herself become a roaring flame. "But do you really think that will matter?" Carla shot back, her tone sharp. "What if the judges don't see that? What if they only see a young cook trying too hard to be edgy? You could throw away your chances." Sarah's heart raced at the challenge. There was a truth in Carla's words, a haunting whisper of doubt that twisted in her gut. What if the risk shattered her aspirations instead? But then another reality rose to the surface. What was the point of culinary art if it wasn't a manifestation of oneself? "I've had enough of letting fear dictate my choices," Sarah admitted, her voice growing steadier. "Every bite I serve should be a testament to my authenticity, and if that means some dishes don't land, then I'm prepared for that. It's time to step beyond mere survival in this industry and thrive through my passion." Silence enveloped them, leaving Sarah poised at the crest of personal discovery. She had confronted her own uncertainties, transforming external validation into internal fortitude. In doing so, the once unbearable strain began to dissolve, replaced by clarity. "Fine, if you're so set on this path, I hope you're ready for the backlash," Carla replied, her expression frozen between disbelief and begrudging admiration. She leaned back, her posture signaling defeat mixed with curiosity. Perhaps Carla sensed something shifting, a depth in Sarah's resolve that hadn't existed before. "I'm ready," Sarah returned, this phrase laden with newfound strength. "And I want you to be part of it. You've been a benchmark for excellence. Your critiques have shaped my skills. I need you to challenge me, to help me refine my message and my dishes as I navigate this next step." Carla studied her for what felt like an eternity, and Sarah's chest tightened under the scrutiny. This was more than a negotiation. It was an alliance, and she had laid her cards on the table. When Carla finally spoke, the steeliness in her voice had shifted. "If you're serious, bring me a dish that showcases everything you're talking about, all those fragmented parts of you crashing together in a way that tells a story. Show me how you're blending experience with authenticity." The challenge hung unspoken in the air, the weight of possibility and the fear of vulnerability entwining. Sarah took a slow, deep breath, an exhale that released the tension that had filled her throughout their conversation. "Prepare the recipe for a story more than simply a meal," Sarah said with an incandescent glimmer in her eyes. With the flames of her initiative ignited, she felt renewed purpose propelling her forward. As the two women locked gazes again, newfound respect mingled with the undercurrent of competition. There was so much at stake, their differences coalescing into a collaborative tension that offered the promise of growth. But as Sarah left the cafe feeling triumphant, the glowing phone in her pocket sent another message, unsettling her anticipation. It was from the competition organizer, and it bore unexpected instructions. Would she follow the path she had just committed to, or would the terms force her to compromise everything she had just articulated? In the shadow of opportunity, uncertainty loomed once more, and Sarah felt the heat of another defining moment approach. The true trial was just beginning. The message was straightforward, cutting through Sarah's elation like a knife. She scrolled through the details. Submissions were due sooner than expected, and there would be a wildcard round designed to shake things up. Contestants were encouraged to unveil their signature dishes in this high-pressure challenge, one they could present to the judges on a public platform, filmed for maximum exposure. Panic surged through her. This was no longer just about cooking. This was about showcasing her soul. Sarah had envisioned the time to perfect her dish, a profound representation of her journey. Now the urgency clashed fiercely with her artistic leanings. Could she capture authenticity in haste? The uncertainty clawed at her resolve, and as she walked to her apartment, she wrestled with self-doubt. Was this pressure a form of true motivation or an impediment to her vision? In the solitude of her kitchen, she unloaded her ingredients, each item a part of herself, fresh herbs resonating with memories of family meals, vibrant vegetables reflecting her dreams, and spices carrying the weight of her struggles. She began to chop and mix, her body moving almost autonomously while her mind spiraled through possibilities. Should she lean into the nostalgia of her grandmother's recipes, or create something that screamed of her own discoveries? A voice inside her urged caution. What if the judges were only looking for recipes that conformed to their established ideas of culinary art? Would her attempt to push boundaries be seen as naive or simply missed the mark? Sarah slammed down the knife, frustration bubbling over. The kitchen, once a sanctuary, felt like a cage. Gathering her thoughts, she paused and closed her eyes, breathing deeply. In those seconds of silence, the wisdom she'd gleaned from Carla's challenge came rushing back. It wasn't just about the dish. It was about the story woven through every element, an expression that resonated with her life. She had leverage here. The sacrifice was real, and her food should symbolize something greater than technique. It was meant to spark an emotional connection. With newfound clarity, Sarah set to work, letting inspiration ground her instead of the looming competition. She chose to infuse her dish with memories and narratives, layering flavors as if building a life. Roasted heirloom tomatoes would symbolize the warmth of home, savory spices reflected the tempest of her struggles, and splashes of contrasting acidity mirrored the sharp lessons learned along the way. As the dish took shape, she realized the crucial components weren't just technical prowess, but also vulnerability and courage. Each simmer, sizzle, and chop became a testament to her journey from a young, unsure cook to someone determined to own her narrative. Eventually, she plated her dish with care. Complications melted away, replaced by a concentrated sense of purpose. It was more than presentation. It was a dish with a voice that communicated her history and aspirations, an embodiment of her growth. But just as the elation returned, a thought pierced through her triumph. What if she poured her heart into this, and the judges dismissed it? It was one thing to confront internal fears, but the prospect of external rejection loomed large, potentially ripping away the pride she had just stitched together. As the evening settled, thoughts and doubts swirled within her like the aromas wafting from her creation. The opportunity drew closer, and alongside it, the weight of expectation pressed down harder. The next day would unveil the culmination of her passion against a backdrop of uncertainty. Sarah's heart raced with anticipation, her mind swirling with sabotage and hope. She had prepared herself to share a part of her essence, but could she rise to meet the judgment yet to come? The moment of truth awaited, and with it came the realization that she would have to not only showcase her culinary talent, but also confront the deeper implications of putting her identity on display. Would she break new ground or crumble under scrutiny? With every tick of the clock, the stakes grew higher. Would her authenticity be her greatest strength or the very thing that could hold her back? The day of the competition dawned bright and clear, but in Sarah's heart, the sky felt heavy with impending storms. She stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her apron, the weight of everything she had fought for pressing down on her shoulders. The competition wasn't merely about showcasing a dish. It had become an exhibition of her journey, a testament to vulnerability, persistence, and wholehearted authenticity. Today, she would either affirm her transformation or confront yet another setback. As she entered the bustling kitchen set up for the competition, the air buzzed with ambition and rivalries, especially as Carla loomed near, her presence exuding confidence and competitiveness. Yet, amidst the chaos, Sarah felt an inner calmness grow, seeded by newfound clarity. She wasn't just a widow lost in the culinary world, she was an artist ready to define herself through flavor. She remembered the conversations with Carla, the challenges, the honesty, and drew strength from them. This was her moment to illuminate her narrative. The first round challenged contestants to present a signature dish. Taking a deep breath, Sarah meticulously set to work. She felt the familiar rhythm of chopping, searing, and plating envelop her, a dance that surged with purpose. Her dish? A roasted heirloom tomato and herb salad infused with fragrant spices and a tangy vinaigrette came alive under her hands. Each ingredient was a deliberate manifestation of her story. She was melding cherished memories with hopes for her future. As the judges approached, Sarah's heartbeat quickened. She wiped her hands and took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. When she presented her dish, she did more than simply describe the flavors. She spoke of her late husband, the joy they had shared in the kitchen, and the love she channeled into her cooking. This was not just a meal, it was a living story of survival and growth. The judges tasted her dish, and she watched their faces intently. One raised an eyebrow, the other leaned in, their keen observations a mix of curiosity and appreciation. As they nodded approvingly, Sarah felt a rush of recognition pour over her. A validation that was more than the sum of just their words. At that moment, she realized that she had conquered a pivotal battle within herself. She no longer sought validation solely from others. She stood firmly in her own recognition. As the competition progressed, Carla's earlier critique pinged in the back of her mind. Confident yet poised, Sarah seized the opportunity to address her rival directly, but rather than confrontational, she offered a perspective of collaboration. Carla, your expertise has shaped me. Let's challenge each other to grow, rather than compete for supremacy. The challenge hung between them, electrifying the air. It was a bold step, but more importantly, it reflected how far she had come, no longer just a part of someone else's story. The competition ultimately culminated in a final presentation that spotlighted not just the culinary talent, but the essence of each chef. Holding herself steady, Sarah revisited her crafted dish, layering her life experiences to deliver a plate that represented resilience, love, and hope. She shared her tale with the audience, and as she unveiled the dish, a sense of peace settled over her. When the judges, after tasting her final dish, declared her a finalist, her heart soared. This wasn't merely a win in the competition, it was the summation of her evolution. The applause echoed in her ears, a sweet blend of acceptance that had eluded her for so long. She had transcended mere acknowledgement. She had embraced her worth. In the weeks that followed, accolades rolled in. Sarah's dishes were featured in articles highlighting the depth of her culinary voice. More notably, she received recognition not just from the culinary community, but also from her children, who stood proud of their mother, reconnecting with her identity. Her kitchen had shifted from a simple workspace to a vibrant epicenter of creativity, welcoming chances and exploration. Months later, Sarah stood behind her kitchen at home, preparing for another family gathering, filled with laughter and shared stories. She smiled to herself, fully aware of how far she had come, from a widow lost in doubt to a woman defined by strength and authenticity. Her journey had propelled her into a world that recognized her talent. In that moment, Sarah felt an unstoppable surge of confidence, a culmination of her determination and resilience, deeply rooted in self-acceptance and triumph. Now was the time to share that journey, to empower others who might feel lost in their kitchens or their lives. You can reclaim your narrative, she whispered into the expansive kitchen, a reminder not just to herself, but to anyone who sought to embrace their story. You need to subscribe now to witness more incredible transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for these emotional journeys. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's incredible journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. This is the moment to rally behind authentic stories of personal overcoming. Don't wait even one more second. Poryć spety i w 20 stworim.